And away we go. Linda, would you be so kind as to introduce Liz?
I don't know a lot about Liz other than I have two of her books, and she writes a pretty frequent article on motorcycle riding for women, does tours. So I'm going to let her, I'm not going to spoil anything, 'cause I don't know a whole lot other than the books that I've read. And she lives in Canada.
There you go. That's all you need to know.
All right. Yeah.
Where it's also the first day of spring here too. So that's great. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen and I'm just going to make sure that this comes up right. And let me see if I can.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce is my neighbor, right?
Yes, that's great. Correct. Hello, Blair.
How you doing?
Good.
Can you see my screen now?
No.
Nope.
I have a picture of a telephone.
You've got the, you hit the share button, then you pick the window you want to share.
Yeah.
Then you got to hit share this window.
Let's try again. Okay, so let's share. And I hit desktop.
Yes. Then
Oh,
there's
the bottom blue button. That's what I forgot the last.
You got it. There you go.
And there. How's that?
There you go.
Perfect.
Full screen.
Okay. All right. First of all, thank you to Linda and also to the rest of the Rotarians for inviting me to talk. And I've enjoyed being a guest and watching your club form and develop. So I thought when she asked me to talk, I thought, you know what, this is something that people always want to know about. I know you ride in groups a fair amount, but this is something that that I get a lot of questions about. So it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek look, and I can entertain your questions at the end of it if you want. So in 2002, 2003, I had some big life changes, and I decided I was going to go on a motorcycle ride for 2 months across the country, across Canada and the US. And people kept saying to me, "Aren't you scared?" And I thought, scared of what? And I've been riding since I was 16. I was in a country where I understood the language. I was staying on the road. I just couldn't understand what there was to be scared about. But I've since done a lot of solo traveling since that time. Most of my solo traveling has been since that time, although I ride with other people as well. And it's really been transformative for me. And so I'm sure that you will identify with some of the things that I'm talking about what solo, why when I say it's dangerous, it's because it opens you up to a whole new way of looking. And there's something that happens with solo traveling that does not happen when you're riding even with one other person. So and you don't have to ride solo all the time. It can be just occasional, but I've done a lot of solo traveling in my days, especially in the last 15 years. So here's a little bit about me. Now let me see if I can get to the next screen. There we go. There's me, and this was a few years ago on one of my trips. So one of the big changes that I talked about when I made in 2003 was walking away from a corporate career in human resources and training and development. It just was no longer meaningful for me, and I wanted to do something else. Great company, great job, all of that, but it wasn't a fit. So that's why I had some time. What do you do when you're a motorcyclist and you've got time in the summertime and no job? So that's when I went away on that trip for 2 months. And since that time, I've been doing a lot of work with motorcycling, a lot with women in motorcycling, not exclusively, but most of what I do is drawing from the motorcycle experience and the symbolism and what we learn when we push our comfort zone. So that's really what I've been doing. So I have written 2 books, as Linda mentioned. The first was Women, Motorcycles, and the Road to Empowerment. And it's really, again, not about motorcycles and not just for women, but it's about what happens when we push our comfort zone and what that enables us to do. And then the next other book was Life Lessons from Motorcycles. I'm working on a third, madly trying to finish it. It's called Crash Landing, The Long Way Home. And this one is also centered around a motorcycle trip, but it talks about how we're shaped by the experiences of our ancestors. So I come at it from a little bit of a different angle. So here's some of the reasons why it's dangerous. It really fosters and grows your independence. Doesn't mean you can't be independent when you're driving with somebody else, when you're riding with somebody else, but you're completely on your own schedule. You have to make your own routes. You have to make your own timing. You stop when you want. That's great, but sometimes it can be threatening for people. Or I shouldn't say threatening. It's just different when you're not used to doing it yourself, when you have to rely completely on your own decisions and your own intuition, and you've never done it before. It can be a little unnerving, but once you get used to it, it's pretty cool. The other thing is, another thing that is resourcefulness. In 2014, I was prepared to go for a motorcycle trip for 12 to 18 months. And that was really researching this book. And I was going to go through the Americas. So this was me packed up. And I know I get criticized because I've got too much stuff on my bike. But this was what I wanted to take. It was loaded. It was balanced. It was, and it was really for me to take for 12 to 18 months on the road, and included some tools and camping equipment and all of those things. When you travel like that, you realize how little you need and how little you can live with. And it also teaches you how to live with very little. Another thing that happened in preparation for that trip is I divested myself of a lot of things. So while it wasn't directly from the motorcycle, it was, I got rid of my place that I lived, my car, lots of possessions. So you realize you don't really need so much stuff. I can be a lot freer and do what I want if I don't have to buy and maintain and replace insure all of these things. So that's why the resourcefulness. I've learned that I can get by with a lot less, and a lot of that comes from my solo travels. It's also, now this is how that trip ended. So, and I say this as confidence, and it is because I crashed. I crashed a few days after that last picture was taken, and my bike was totaled, and I was injured, not so bad. I mean, I really damaged my shoulder, and that ended my trip. But the thing is, one of the big fears that people have when they think about solo motorcycling is what happens if you crash, or what happens if you break down in the middle of nowhere. Well, I crashed in the middle of nowhere in rural Alberta, and I was by myself. I wasn't all loaded up on this. I was going someplace where I had some plans for the day, but I fortunately was able to get up, and I was down a grade, and I climbed up on the road and flagged down somebody who picked me up. And it's been my experience that this was the most dramatic experience of this, or dramatic example of this. But you, first of all, you're never alone. And even when you're in remote rural places, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, and it seems that whenever you need help, help arrives. And that's certainly been my experience. And that was, again, exactly what happened in this time. Somebody came, I flagged them down, and they took me into the hospital. And so that was that. So it builds. I mean, you know what to do. And there was never a question that I'd return to riding. I knew my trip was over for the time being, but I also knew I'd return to riding. And there's my new bike, and I've got the same stuff on it, still packed the same way, but it's a little smaller bike, and it's I've traveled since that time, probably, I guess, 30,000 miles, 50,000 kilometers on this Triumph. So it's a matter of being getting back. Now, it wouldn't be for everybody maybe to get back on the bike, but I knew that it was for me. And it was not, I'll tell you, it was not easy, especially when I ride on gravel. I still get some flashbacks. But it's a question of, is this what you want to do or is it not? And so that resilience is built in, and that motorcycle teaches you. I mean, it's just been my companion. I call it my muse, actually, my guide since I was 16 years old. And it's really helped me with a lot of things. Also the approachability. Now, these three were all motorcyclists, and I met them. And again, I know this happens when you're with other people, but it happens more when you're solo, not just with other motorcyclists, but with other people. I've had people stop me and want to get their daughter's picture taken with me, or they want to ask me questions. When you're camping, people invite you to join them for dinner. And these were three people I'd met. This was taken in Red Lodge, Montana. And we had met in Cody, Wyoming. And they're all three train engineers. I've never met anybody that drives a train or operates a train before. And these three people are all, they're all train engineers. They rode on a bike ride. Another thing is receptiveness. So when you're out riding solo, you're a lot more likely, it's easier to find a place to stay. With home sharing, for example, it's easier to put up one person than two or four, although two can work as well. And so I've used that some in different places where I've traveled, staying with other people. And this was a woman that I met and stayed with in Pennsylvania one day. So being receptive to that. Here's another great example. This is my friend John, who's in Calgary, and talk about receptive. And again, I don't think these things might not happen, or I wouldn't have met these people had I not been by myself. John, I met once before I crashed. And so when I did, I was near Calgary, and I needed some help. I didn't know what to do with my bike. I left it in the ditch when the other man drove me to the hospital. And so I called John, who lived in Calgary. It ended up, John, he went and packed up my campsite, which was 20 miles in a completely different direction, drove a couple of hours out to where my bike was, got it out of the impound, which the police said picked it up by that time. And then he and his mother invited me to stay. I stayed with them for 2.5 weeks in their home in Calgary so I could get followed up after I was discharged. I was in the hospital for 6 days, and then I stayed with them for 2.5 weeks so I could follow up with the doctor. And it's just been, and of course we've kept in contact since then. But it's something that happens. And again, when you're by yourself, you think, how am I going to manage if things go wrong? Well, people are always willing to help. Been my experience anyways. And you get preferred seating sometimes too. It's often easy to fit one person in at the front row of even places that are sold out, whether it's in the movie theater or whether this is on Lake Superior, roadside stop, pretty good seat there. Sometimes getting on a ferry, I've been jammed in at the last minute on the ferry when nobody else could fit in, but they can always cram in one more motorcycle. And of course, I got preferred seating on the ferry then too. It wasn't actually, this one wasn't that crowded, but it's easier for one person to fit in. When I was preparing to go on my trip, I had to learn some mechanical things. Well, I call this mechanical, like what to do if I get a nail on my tire. I don't know if you can see the tire on the left with the nail sticking out, and I managed to get it out and then put a plug in it. This was a car tire, but it was a tire that I was able to practice with. And so you learn things about your motorcycle, and it makes you a much more confident rider, even if you learn the basics. But I think those are things, especially if you're going into remote areas, that it's really important to know, and it also helps build your confidence. Then the serendipity of what happens on the road. There's a lot captured in this one picture. So I told you I flagged down the man and he took me into the hospital 90 minutes into Calgary. Well, that was the man, Jim, who's got the orange shirt on here. And I met up with him the year after that. And I met up with him because, well, I would have anyways, but the woman standing behind me, Marcy, lived out in that area. We'd been communicating on Twitter for a couple of years, and I didn't know where she was from. But it turned out she lived just a couple of miles from where I crashed. And her husband, who's beside me with the beard, went to school with Jim, who picked me up. Anyways, it was a lot of different ways that we were connected in that one picture. And so I stayed with Marcy and her husband Murray, and we all got together for dinner, and it was really nice. And I have visited them again since when I've been out west. There's also life lessons. This one, and there's all kinds of them that happen. 2 years ago, I was on a trip, and this time I was in northern Alberta in a small town about 300 kilometers, 200 miles west of Edmonton. And I had some place that I really wanted to be the next day. So whenever I'm camping or traveling, I make sure that I'm ready the night before. So I went to the gas station, filled up my bike, and I inadvertently filled it up with diesel fuel. The gas station was not much newer than the one you're looking at, the picture of the one you're looking at here. And they had 2 pumps. I always go to Shell because here in Canada anyways, they've got their premium high octane gas has no ethanol in it. And so I went to the Shell station, and there was 2 pumps there. One had just two nozzles with bronze, the regular, and then the other one had, it said diesel, but there was like a red bag over the diesel nozzle. And the other one said V-Power. So I thought, V-Power, that's what I take. I checked it a couple of times, filled it up, didn't smell anything. And it ran, it got me back to the campsite, which was about 10 miles. What I didn't realize was that there was high test diesel, and half the vehicles in northern Alberta run on it. So that's what I'd filled my bike up with, and it didn't start in the morning. So, but getting back to the life lessons, it was a time when, again, I was researching my book, my ancestors, and different perceptions I had about the way I was, what I'd learned from them, I guess. And it was just such a clear message to me that, my motorcycle was filled with the wrong fuel and it didn't run. So what had I been giving myself as fuel, and how had that been making me not run properly or not be the most that I could be because I was giving myself the wrong fuel? So these are things that happen on the road. Motorcycle has been my teacher, and this is one of the things that taught me here. Of course, we all know about the freedom, and I don't have to, everybody that rides knows about this. There's just something a little extra special when you're riding by yourself. That's my bike, it's not me riding it, but I think I took the picture. And then of course the spiritual connection, which we all feel. But again, when you're by yourself, somehow it feels just a little stronger when you're riding through country like this. This was on Chief Joseph Highway. And I don't need to explain. You guys know, what it's like to be in those areas. So why is it so dangerous to go on a solo motorcycle ride? Well, it's simple, really, because of all the reasons I've just described. Not in themselves, but people, then myself, you have all these things. They don't go away once you're off the motorcycle. So you feel this confidence and this freedom and this, you can do anything. And you get off the motorcycle and they're still there, although we sometimes don't think about that. So if I can do this on my motorcycle, what else am I going to be called to do? What else am I going to be asked, or what else can I do to make the most of my life? And it's my belief that if you can master a motorcycle, you can master anything. So that's where I come to the dangerous part. It's not what you learn. There's lots that you learn. It's what's the next step then after you learned this stuff. Okay, so now what? Now what's going to happen? So it's I guess a mixed blessing, but I really love it. And the thing is, if riding in groups has its benefits too, but certainly solo, and even just once or twice, it doesn't have to be a long trip, and it just starts small. It's easy to get into, and it's just worth a try. I would recommend if you haven't tried it, and I know a lot of you have, but if you haven't, then it's please do. So that's really what I wanted to pass along about my experiences. I'd be really interested to hear what yours are, if you agree or disagree. Is motorcycling dangerous or not? But other than that, no, it's not. Just go. Aren't you scared? No, I'm not scared. I'll just go and do. I'll prepare, and I'll go riding. And people who don't ride cannot appreciate that. So that's it. I did want to mention one other thing here at the end. A friend of solo motorcycling is dangerous, absolutely, because it takes you to places that you never dreamt you'd go, and that's internally and externally. A friend of mine, if anyone's interested, has this, just put out this book, Hit the Road. It's a woman's guide to solo motorcycle touring. And I just wanted to mention that. She rides a lot, and she's just published this. So that's it. Any questions or comments? What questions do you have? What shared experiences do we have?
Would you go ahead and stop sharing your screen there for a minute, then the other people can pop up.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
There we go. So, what questions, anybody?
I would just like to say thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. I've only done one solo ride by myself. I went to Manitoulin Island for a week by myself, went across on the ferry and spent a week touring the island. And it was kind of scary, but it was invigorating. And when I came home, my brother, who also has rode a motorcycle, he actually told me how stupid and irresponsible I was for doing that. And that blew me away. So you are an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. Are you from around here?
I'm from Wyerton, Ontario.
Okay. Well, I know where that is. I'm in Orangeville.
Okay. Good.
And I love Manitoulin. What a great place to start solo travel.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Except it's so flat.
Yeah.
Not all flat.
It's interesting that you were commenting there, Glenda, about going and riding on the Manitoulin. I take it you took the Chi-Chi across.
Yes, I did.
Any problems with your bike there? They tuned just strapping you in without a problem?
No problem at all. You actually tie down your own bike on the Chi-Chi. They have ropes there and you tie it yourself. So as much as I was afraid to go by myself, I actually felt pretty good because there was other bikes went on that day and they didn't know how to tie their bikes, but I did. So I was able to teach them.
The photo I had waiting for the ferry and then on the bench of the ferry, that was on the Chi-Chi.
I thought it was.
Yeah, you probably recognize it.
I've ridden that from the Manitoulins back to Tobermory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting cruise. And it was interesting that you comment on that today because he's not on tonight. He's usually on is John Cram. And he had popped a question on the internet today about, does anybody have any knowledge of Ride Manitoulin? And there's actually a ride scheduled July 13th and 14th this year, specifically for riding the Manitoulin Island.
They have that every summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's a big tour. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people go, but I do know a couple of the organizers of it.
Looks like it's an interesting rally. Might have to do that someday, except for this year, probably won't be able to make it.
Yeah.
Not planning on it. Right, Judy?
You're going to be somewhere on your way to Alaska, Jerry?
Yeah, I think we're leaving July 6th is the plan. The last we talked about it.
We may leave earlier than that. We have to talk.
We have to talk?
Yeah.
I don't get back from Toronto until June 30th, so.
No, I was just thinking like maybe the first part of that week instead of the last. Only because I want to be back at least 2 weeks before Kate's wedding. So I don't want to cut us short.
You don't want to delay that wedding, huh?
No, don't want to do that.
So, Liz, you brought back memories each time you were talking about something there. I think we all ride solo, at least short distances anyway. So, I was curious what you're commenting on. And then I think the biggest danger of riding solo is getting more and more into this sport myself.
Well, that's true too.
A lot of you don't know what I do for a living. I'm a consulting engineer, but what I primarily work as is an expert witness on accident reconstruction. And I do a lot of work on all the engineering physics behind the accidents and the statistics and all that stuff. And there's a number of people that I work with that cannot believe I ride a motorcycle just because of their knowledge of statistics. And I say the same thing to every one of them. If that's the case, I wonder if they parked their car a mile away from their house, because the biggest number of accidents on your car, or accidents out there where people actually get hurt and die, are within a mile of their house. So
Right.
I would guess you should stay away from your car for a mile of your house too then. Not quite the same, but that's my answer. Works for me.
I use that one, Jerry. It doesn't always go over well.
Yeah, I was going to bring up one point on riding solo. I have ridden solo a lot, and I've ridden with groups, but when I ride solo cross country, the thing I have to watch out for the most is getting tired, because I don't know if it's a guy thing or not, but we always try to push ourselves perhaps further than we need to. And I was on a Sportster one day and did 504 miles, and I thought I was going to die. Not only just fall asleep on the bike, but just can soar. And I would get off increasingly often just to stretch. But you want to make sure you don't get too tired on a bike if you're going solo.
When you ride solo, what you have to do is set guidelines, parameters, and just force yourself to abide by those parameters, such as no drinking during the day. If you want to have a beer or something, save it for when you bed down for the night. Some people are more adverse to riding late evening, early mornings. It depends on the individual. And anytime I've done solo rides, like 10,506 miles in 26 days, you do a lot of research about the areas where you're going, where you're going to be visiting. So you understand local customs and you avoid problems that way.
Not with us.
You seen that bear you saw? Judy wasn't a problem?
No, not a problem. We just turn around.
just go the opposite direction.
Bear is his highway.
that grizzly, he owned that road, not us.
No, saw him look inside a full-size van window without even getting up off his back or his front feet. I said, no, it's all his.
Talk about tired riding. I think it's tiring to lead a group of 12 to 20 people.
It is.
300 miles more than it is to ride a bike for 400 or 500 miles by yourself.
Especially when you have different skill levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done that.
Don't like it.
I always hang out in the back because I'm not very skilled.
Yeah, right.
That's supposed to be the position for the best rider.
That's why he's in the back most of the time.
No.
Oh, he's the best rider.
No, when we went to Alaska, we really didn't have. We just had a general direction we were going. Didn't know how far we would get each day. Where we were going to end up, and it worked out. We only had a couple times where we had issues with gas or with not finding a really good place to stay, but that was half the fun of doing it that way, was just to go and see how far we got.
Yeah, we did solo together.
Yeah, well.
Liz, when you do your solo riding, do you plan where you're going to head each time, or just go and stop where you are when you get tired?
I do a combination. So if I'm going to be in a place that I know is busy, and you know, I may not get a spot, then, or if I need to be in a specific place at a certain time and I have to be there, then I'll make a reservation. But a lot of times I wait and just see what I get when I get there. I camp a lot. I don't like to stay in motels, especially when I'm traveling solo, because it's a lonely place to be. And when you're camping, first of all, I love being outside, and there's always people around. So mostly I don't plan.
Yeah, have any of you ever ridden with Don Thiel?
I have not, no.
Don't think so.
He, I think, is up outside of Idaho, Washington, and he was on that group that I led through the Continental Divide in Colorado for 4 days. And he was on a great big Goldwing, and I think he had racing in his career at one time. And even though he was in his, 6th or 7th decade age-wise, he had recently completed a power racing course with his Goldwing. And he asked permission every day to leave the group, and he would meet us somewhere because we were too slow. And he would take off, and he could make that Goldwing do things I never thought a heavy bike could do, and he'd be out of sight in 3 minutes. Anyway, he was quite the solo rider.
Tom, have you been on the Tail of the Dragon?
I've done that twice, and then I did it in a motorhome towing a car.
Ew.
You're as bad as those semi-drivers.
Well, the good thing was I was going west to east, and I only slowed down or stopped 3 times to let bikes and or cars go by me. I'm always polite that way. But there must have been 800 to 1,000 motorcycles coming from east to west, and boy, they were pouring the coal on, and I always gave them as much room as I could.
You see all those crotch rockets flying around those corners, but my understanding, the guy that's got the speed record for going through there is on a Goldwing.
Well, it might be Don, because he could make that thing disappear.
I think if I remember, it's a guy in his mid-60s actually that's got it. Well, I don't know where I heard that from somewhere, but
I don't either.
I thought that'd be you, Jerry.
No.
The one thing I wanted to avoid on that trip, no matter when it was the Tree of Shame.
Oh, yeah. Well, the better road up there is Moonshiner 28.
You like 28?
Yep, Moonshiner 28, north from Franklin, North Carolina.
I like the snake coming out of Boone.
Is that the Rattlesnake or the Rattler Road?
No, the Rattler's over coming out of Maggie Valley going north. That's a nice ride too.
Correct.
But I don't know, the one I've always enjoyed was the snake. I agree with the Moonshiner though, but yeah. I think both of them are far more enjoyable rides than the
tail. The tail
the only thing that's bad about the tail to me is all the traffic.
Exactly. And it's 318 curves in 11 miles.
Yeah.
You're done. It's too short.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one's 30-some miles. It's 3 mountains, 2 valleys, and I don't know, 400 some curves.
Yeah. It's not like the Alps.
So that's the snake. It's US 423, I think it is.
I think that's correct.
And last time I rode that, I forgot to tell you guys about that, Rory and Judy. Last time I rode that, I came up and over a hill. I had Bob Shiner and Terry Skoklund on my tail, and hopping over the hill, and there's a black bear, mama black bear, and a couple goats right road. I had to stop, let them go, but by the time Bob caught up to me, they were gone. So that was kind of fascinating.
I want to run into one of them.
Yeah, they tend to own the road when they're out there. The only other thing I came across that I think owned the road more was up at Custer State Park, came up and over the hill. And riding solo through there too. And up and over the hill was 3 big buffalo, 3 big male buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
coming down the road the other way.
Yeah.
They don't move easily.
Can't breathe.
Yeah. Well, any other questions or comments for Liz?
No, just thank you for the talk.
You're welcome.
Presentation, Liz.
Very good presentation.
Very much appreciated, Liz. In fact, I just did an internet search while you were talking on you, and you come up pretty easy with your picture and talk about the writing and whatever you do. So I'm really glad that you took time out to talk with us tonight.
Thanks. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
She has her own website, lizjansen.com, folks.
All right.
And you got a couple of books there too, I see.
Yeah, it is. And I got to say, I've been a little inactive lately just because I'm focused on getting this manuscript done, and I'm editing, and I can't, I can do very little else at the same time. I want to get it done and published this year. So it's like I said, it's called Crash Landing, The Long Way Home, but it's about how we're shaped by the experiences of our ancestors. So that crash that I had, that was the trip I set out to research it, and the crash really wasn't part of it. I didn't know I was going to crash, but it became part of the story.
Learning experience.
Yeah, it was a learning. I mean, you're not always fortunate in a crash, but I was.
If you ever go through that, my recommendation is to think about it deeply, but get right back on a motorcycle right away before you've had time to think about it for too long.
Yeah,
well, I couldn't. My shoulder had to be reconstructed. So, yeah.
I flipped one when I was 17. It took me 3 more years before I ever got back on one.
Oh, yeah. Really? Anyways, I was going to say I was getting ready to get back on about 7 or 8 months later, and I was walking and broke my ankle. It's not a fluke thing. So then I really couldn't ride for another couple months. So, and I think I broke my ankle so that people who said, see, motorcycling is dangerous, look what happened to you. It's like, well, then so is walking.
I've seen more dead bodies in cars ever than from motorcycles.
Oh, come on.
I've seen many things, and I've analyzed a lot of them, and fundamentally it's interesting that the fatal accidents usually need 5 or 6 things at once to go wrong. Mm-hmm. So they're a very rare event from that point of view. Maybe someday I'll do a talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thank you, Liz. Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome, Jerry, and thank you. And Linda. Thank you, Linda.
And with that, I don't have anything else scheduled for tonight. I do know that a week from tonight we meet again. It's happy hour, and for some reason, those meetings always turn out just as good as any of these. So
amazing what happiness will do.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. We have so many good things we talk about. Coming up in April, I'm going to try and introduce something a little bit different as we start doing our business meetings. We have enough new people now coming on board. And then there's the rest of us older and has-been Rotarians have got our own unique, I call it Rotary folklore, a buildup of what we think Rotary is, and it's not always exactly what Rotary is. So I thought that starting in April with our business meeting, we'll bring in some outside people just to talk about some of the basics of Rotary and get a little bit different subject each time and get our Rotary knowledge back up to speed as we go through.
Good idea.
And if because you all have good speakers in your district, if you've seen somebody talk about 4-way test or something about conferences or something else, don't be afraid to say something, because we've got a format here that makes it very easy to bring on speakers from anywhere, and it'd be nice to have more speakers from the outside, like tonight. It was very nice to have that. Anything else good of us tonight?
Good.
Really good? All right. Mike, would you lead us in the 4-way test? You're going to need to unmute there, pal. Mike, you're muted yet. There we go. I unmuted you. Can you lead us in the four-way test, Mike?
Okay. Of the things we think, say, and do, we ask ourselves these questions. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
With that, I thank you all. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Good night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Jerry.
Bye now.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thanks,
Okay.
Liz.
You're welcome. Bye.
Come on.